Thank you, everybody. My name is Don Berryhill, also known as the Laser Coach, and I've been really looking forward to this presentation tonight from Travis Mahan, who is the president of Advalight, and he's here to talk about a really interesting and unique, predominantly yellow light laser called the ADVATx. So I'm going to turn over to Travis in just a minute to do his presentation. But before, I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. I've worked in the medical laser industry in various capacities for over 25 years. I'm an independent consultant, coach, trainer. I don't work for any company. And basically, my goal is to help laser buyers become better educated consumers. And I want to share the information that I've learned over the years. So my services include advanced laser training, analysis, and comparison of different lasers and energy-based devices. I can provide service, guidance, and options. I can assist with various laser and device purchases and usually save people a lot of money. And I can also provide some really good marketing and financing contacts for anybody that might need that. So please think of me as your first contact for anything laser. If I can't help you, I will find somebody who can, and you can learn more at lasercoach.com. So I want to welcome Travis, and we're going to pull up his presentation and let him go through this. And then if there's any questions, type those in, and I'll read them off, and we'll go from there. So Travis, all yours.
Great, thank you, Don. And just to echo your sentiments, appreciate everybody taking time out to join us this evening, and hopefully you'll find it to be time well spent. So just to jump right in here, you know, the ADVATx really represents a bit of a paradigm shift and what's available out there from an energy-based or laser device. Before I jump into the presentation, I'll give you a little bit of background on Advalight itself. We are a Danish company. We're based out of Ballerup, just outside of Copenhagen, Denmark. We actually have been in business since 2007, although we did not bring the ADVATx to market until late 2018. So if you may have heard a little bit of buzz about us, there's been a lot of coverage recently. Probably the most recent newsworthy thing that happened was a beautiful editorial piece in Allure magazine that talked about rosacea and an editor's experience through that. But so some great things out there online. I would encourage anyone after this, if you want to know more, to hit our website, advalight.com, or also just Google and see what you find out there. So with that, we will jump right in. So we refer to the ADVATx as foundational technology. And the reason being is that really the system is so versatile. You've got 25 different FDA CE cleared indications, and really ranging everything from, you know, your more traditional derm applications like port wine stains, okay, that traditional yellow, and including hyperpigmentation, fine lines, wrinkles, pore size reduction. You know, I'd mentioned the system has 25 cleared indications for skin types 1 through 5. So one of the very you know, important things with or factors with the ADVATx is not only do we have all of these different indications that we can treat safely and effectively, but we're also able to do it on virtually all skin types. We are cleared through skin type 5. We have a number of physicians doing off-label treatments with skin type 6. And so you've got really the elimination of not being able to service those skin of color patients, which we know make up a bigger and bigger portion of our demographics. And also, there's no longer a laser season, if you will. So summertime does not mean that your laser practice shuts down. Why yellow and infrared? If you're not familiar with yellow light or yellow lasers, you know, these really the wavelengths between 585 and 595, which make up that yellow spectrum, you know, have long been established as the gold standard for vascular applications by Rock Anderson and selective photothermolysis were all based on pulse dye lasers targeting vascular targets and oxyhemoglobin as its chromophore. So it's been very, very well established that, hey, that is the go-to for anything red. What we learned through the years was that there's actually also a secondary absorption in melanin. And then if you look at our system, we pair that 589 yellow light 1319 infrared. So it's nice to have, but it's, there's nothing that special about it. Well, over the last 7-8 years of actually developing these protocols, we had our eyes opened as well. It's going, hey, you know what? Not only is it standalone, but the synergy between these two wavelengths that we'll talk about is really, really impressive. And again, there's nothing else really like it out there that delivers the way it does. So with the 1319, you add in a non-ablative resurfacing wavelength. It's chromophore water, and you're looking at bulk heating, so collagen regenesis, the ability to shut down the production of sebaceous glands. We'll talk about that when we look at the synergy in treating acne here momentarily, as well as new fibroblast production. So pulse thinking. Pulse thinking is the patented process on how it is that we generate yellow light. So the holy grail, if you will, in aesthetic lasers and devices has been, could anyone create a solid state, meaning diode-based laser that could produce yellow light? And for 20 plus years, companies were out there trying to do that, and nobody could really do it because it was very, very difficult. Right. Matter of fact, our founders were approached by a very famous Danish dermatologist, Dr. Peter Bjerring, who came to them as they were students at the Danish Technological University and asked them, build me a solid state yellow laser to replace the pulse dye. I hate the dye kit. I hate the purpura. I hate everything about it. Love the outcomes eventually, but hate getting there. Right. And can we do something better and smarter? And so our founders went to work and really took a completely different approach to this. And the way they did it was that, okay, if we were to combine two different wavelengths, in this case, 1064 and 1319, Q-switch those, and then synchronize them and run them through a nonlinear crystal on the exact sequence, can we combine those photons to create a third unique wavelength? So if anybody in the audience is familiar with frequency doubling, second harmonic generation, how is it that we get 532, right? So 1064, we had two 1064 photons together, we end up with 532. Very similar concept, much more difficult to do in this way, but that's how we were able to generate a solid state yellow laser, excuse me. And then if we want the 1319 wavelength output, we simply turn the 1064 crystal off. So probably more important to the patient experience, which really with the ADVATx is second to none, is this concept of soft pulsing. Right? So when we deliver energy, we're actually microdosing tissue with multiple nanopulses within a pulse. Okay, so if you think about every second that this system is generating light, it's actually generating 12,000 pulses. Okay, so what that allows us to do is that allows us to put exponentially higher amounts of energy into tissue with no adverse events, without the need for numbing, and with minimal discomfort and no social downtime. If you look at the mechanisms of action of 589, our depth of penetration is right down a little over 1 millimeter, about 1.2 millimeters. Again, that targeted chromophores are oxyhemoglobin and melanin, and we're looking at coagulation of those vascular lesions. Pigmented lesions are really interesting, the way the effect we have on those. So unlike other devices like an IPL, for example, that essentially is going to burn off that unwanted pigmented lesion, what we're doing is we're actually going to break that pigment up, shut down the vascular component that's feeding those melanocytes, and actually restore the body back to its natural state. So rather being in that panic state of, let me throw melanocytes and melanin up to the surface of the skin to protect the epidermis, we break that up and reset the body back to where it's in that natural state that it wants to be in. So photocoagulation is what we're looking at. It's that controlled transfer of heat. We do not get purpura, we do not get edema, do not get any PIH. If you're looking at 1319, again, non-ablative resurfacing, targeting water as its chromophore. Depth of penetration is down to 2 millimeters. And we're looking at that thermal injury to the papillary dermis. So we're initiating that body's wound healing response. We're stimulating fibroblast activity. The 1319 is kind of the sizzle to the steak, if you will, right? The 589 does a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the work. The 1319 is what gets the ooh off factor when the patient looks in the mirror right after they've had the treatment done. Okay, and this is a treatment that patient comes in, it is the ultimate lunchtime laser facial. They come in, they get cleared up from their rosacea, for example. Within a couple hours, they can go to dinner that night with no makeup on, and they're going to get compliments from their girlfriends on how their skin looks better. I actually had a patient. I was working with a dermatologist up in New York City, and a patient came in, got her rosacea on her cheeks treated, went home. About an hour later, we get a phone call, and the doctor pulls me out of the room. He says, "Hey, that patient that was here wants to come back in." And of course, the alarm bells go off. I'm like, "Okay, did something happen? She looked great when she left." He said, "Well, no, her husband wants her to come back because he said her cheeks look so good. Not only the rosacea, the texture and tone of her skin looks so much better. He asked if she could go back up here and have the rest of her face done." Right. So that's the type of kind of immediate type of response that we're seeing. If you look at 1319 specifically for acne, we're going to do thermal damage to those sebaceous glands, right? So regulating sebum production. Acne is a really interesting application for us, in that unlike some of the newer technologies that have been introduced this year in the market with a lot of hype about curing acne, targeting and trying to destroy sebaceous glands, we take a different approach, right? Our approach is, hey, let's use 589 to kill that acne bacteria, create that anti-inflammatory effect, remove that redness and angriness for those lesions. And at the same time, let's come back in with 1319 in the same session and shrink down those sebaceous glands. So really looking at acne from both angles, if you will, and addressing all the components, not just one. Those areas that are affected, zone 1, we get that synergy like I just talked about, especially if you're looking at something like acne, also with rejuvenation. Okay. Zone 2 is going to be really where our 1319 does the heavy lifting. And again, looking at that improvement in fine lines, wrinkles, tone, and texture. Our delivery mechanism is unique in that we deliver our energy through a scanner, and typically in scan patterns. The handpiece is ergonomics, lightweight. We use a single 1 millimeter spot, but then, as I said, we can expand that out to different line sizes, different densities on squares, circles, etc. This I'll say somewhat old school way of thinking that you need to cool the skin if you need to have integrated cooling if you're going to treat with laser. The reason that thought process is out there and promoted is, one, you've either got the wrong wavelength, or two, you've got the wrong delivery mechanism, right? And so what are you trying to do? You're trying to minimize any damage you could do to surrounding tissue. Well, in this case, we've got the right wavelength, we've got the right delivery mechanism. We don't need to cool. So what we do is we use a sapphire tip, which you see there, allows you to glide across the skin when combined with ultrasound gel. That little bit right there is the only thing we do for a patient. So again, there's no numbing, no sitting waiting. This isn't a device where you get it in your office and 2 weeks later you go, yeah, well, they said no numbing, but nobody can stand it. No, numbing cream for us is actually contraindicated. We do not want you to use it, nor will we train you to use it. Very intuitive user interface. So this system was designed from day one to be able to be delegated very easily, right? So what used to be in the domain of really almost strictly dermatologists with a pulse dye laser, now we moved in and said, hey, you know what? Let's bring a better solution, a smarter solution, and let's bring it to the masses in a way that dermatologist can now delegate that to someone on staff, or that med spa can now confidently bring that system on, and where they're allowed, an esthetician can run this, or an RN, or whatever the case may be, depending on your state regulation. I'd mentioned that the system, we can deliver a variety of scan patterns, so everything from a single spot up to what we use most commonly down here in the bottom right, to be a 10 by 10 area with a high density delivery. So jump into some of our before and after pictures here. You can also see a number of these on our website. But looking at just tone and texture, right? So 2 days post-treatment, where you see just huge improvement in the quality of the skin. Amazing result here, single treatment using both wavelengths. And sometimes some of our clients refer to the ADVATx as a magic eraser because it can take what looks like a dirty face, right, and restore it to that natural flesh tone. So that's what we want. We want to look at, hey, where your watch strap is, or where that bra strap is, what does that normal flesh tone skin actually look like, that healthy skin? And that's where we want to go. So you can see in a picture like this, we've cleaned her up. And especially if you look at her little melasma mustache she's got working on here. So one treatment, 30 days post, and really nice clearance. Again, this is at a 90-day follow-up, so lasting results after 2 treatments. Again, your typical sun damage patient, skin tattoos, out in the sun a lot. This is one of our providers in Colorado. So if you're somewhere with a lot of sun exposure, it's a great alternative to upgrade over your traditional systems you may have used, like an IPL, for example. Also looking at the results we get on wrinkle reduction. Okay, so 30 days later, this isn't just swelling, this isn't just edema, this is long-lasting results. So jumping back in here, this is your typical patient with that background erythema, right? And again, something that you're never going to be able to touch with something like an IPL. I mean, IPL will do a decent job on browns. Some of them do a really good job on browns, but you're never going to get that background red using an IPL on a patient like this. More impressive even as we start looking at melasma. Okay, so here's a skin type 5, right? 1 treatment of melasma 1 week later. Another melasma patient here, darker skin type. Okay, this was 3 treatments, 2 weeks apart. Looking at our acne results. So this is I actually was there for the treatment of, we treated this patient. This was 1 treatment and this was 24 hours later. So next day. That makes for a happy patient. Again, and I'm a little partial to acne. I have teenage daughters that have all, struggled with or still fighting acne, and are constantly asking me, Dad, when can I get treated again? Because these are the type of results that we see. If you look at acne scarring, so, the overall quality of the skin here, huge improvement. And then I actually had one of our doctors point out to me just about a month ago, we were looking at this picture, and the reduction of inflammation as well, especially around the nose, is pretty amazing. So you can just know acne on a darker skin type, right? I love this picture because not only obviously did we do, I shared the story about the rosacea patient earlier and coming back in because her husband commented how great her skin looked. This is a great example of a young lady who came in to get her acne treated. And not only do we clear that up, but look at the reduction of all that background erythema, right? So what does she leave with? She leaves very happy, right? Because not only did it clear her skin up from the acne outbreaks, but the quality of her overall quality and dermal health restoration is really second to none. Again, looking at one of our Indian patients. So again, safer on skin of color. Rosacea. So rosacea presents itself, right, as a vascular condition, even though we know it's actually a nerve disorder, a nerve that's either missing or not functioning properly. But what are we able to do? We're able to shut down all of that microvasculature and clear that rosacea up. Our scar treatments and applications, so able to, again, reduce the redness, from that, but also then going back in with 1319, targeting that water and shrinking that volume of that scar. So that was one treatment immediately after. Again, and as soon as those sutures come out, we can treat those scars. We have a number of, one of our top plastic surgeons, Ben Tittle, here in Dallas, has gotten to where now he makes this part of every one of his breast aug treatments, tummy tucks, et cetera. If he's cutting, he's using the ADVATx and just rolls it right into their package. Tried and true telangiectasia, not the sexiest application, but it's very, very satisfying. And everybody who walks in typically has something that you can treat, little vessels here and there. Again, more of a core derm application, but something that patients respond very favorably to, right? So be able to come in, do that one treatment, and that thing is gone. And then again, more traditional derm psoriasis applications as well. So a lot of versatility with this device. A lot of things you can do with it. The nice thing is it does these treatments really, really well, right? There's a lot of devices out there that are kind of jack of all trades, master of none, and we don't get that with the Adva. It excels at anything vascular, pigment, melasma, scars, things we've touched on here. So if you look at why the ADVATx, one is delivering that patient experience, right? So patients don't want to come in and be beaten up. Okay, if you can give them a great outcome without them having to sit there for 30 minutes with emla cream on, or having to be bruised, or having to be swollen, or having unexpected edema where you don't know, there's some technologies out there that might get a nice result, but you might also have 3 days of extreme edema, which you have no idea from one patient to the next if that's going to occur. Not the case with the Adva. We've talked about the minimal discomfort and no edema, et cetera. The synergy in these wavelengths and it being safe and effective for virtually all skin types sets it apart. The dependability, right? Because it is all solid state. So it's actually even air cooled. So we're not changing water. We're not changing filters. We're not changing handpieces. Both wavelengths are delivered through the same handpiece. It's about as easy to use a device as you're going to find in the market, especially for something as advanced as it is. And then, of course, there's a return on investment. There are no consumables with this device. There's no click fees, no hidden gotcha things like that. Very low operating costs, works on a standard 110 volt outlet. The system is available with up to a 5-year warranty. And then we provide on-site clinical training, all of your digital marketing support, training videos, and marketing collateral. So Don, that sums it up on my side. I don't know if we had any questions come in you'd like to ask.
Okay, that was great. That's so interesting the way this laser works. And great before and after pictures. Love seeing those. Yeah, got a few questions here. How does this compare to IPL? Is one of the questions.
Okay, so great question. So if you look at IPL, so, and I don't care what fancy acronym or name somebody wants to call their IPL device. There's lots of them out there. At the end of the day, if it's an IPL, it's an IPL, right? And what does IPL do? IPL actually targets different depths in the skin. Okay, it's not chromophore specific. So all these different filters you put in, everything else, it's not really looking for a specific target. It's looking for depth, right? And so what does that mean? That means it's going to hit everything at that depth where that penetrates. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? so with this, you go from something that's almost like a sledgehammer with an IPL, and I don't care how much you've been numbed, the sensation of being snapped in the face with a rubber band hundreds of times is not pleasant, right? We've convinced
I don't like getting an IPL treatment. I like but it hurts.
I mean, I don't know what it does hurt, and so that patient experience that you're able to develop or deliver, and not only that, but a superior outcome, right? Because not only are we going to take care of the reds, we're going to take care. What is a brown actually made up of? It's actually underlying reds typically, right? That combine, and then you get that presentation of browns as well. So within any brown, there's also red. Things like poikiloderma savat, right, clear up amazingly well with this. So any sort of dyschromia,
nice,
etc.
Yeah. How much are treatment prices usually?
Obviously, it's gonna differ based on the patient demographics where we're at, right? So our national average is right at $650 per treatment. The lowest I know of out there is right at $400. The highest I know is actually right there in Houston, is at $1,100 per treatment. We see a typical package of 4 treatments going for right around $3,000.
Okay, and no disposables, so that's great.
No disposables. Yep.
That's where, like you said, they get you on some of the lasers that doctors buy, that they don't realize the cost involved in using these tips that they are proprietary to those systems. How does this?
Well, and it's just to tag onto that comment too, Don, is one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked when we talk about a consumable cost or a tip cost, right? Does that influence the clinical decision you make with that patient on the table? Right, you're looking at that patient and go, man, I really could do 1 or 2 more passes on them to really get them to the clinical endpoint. I need to get them to give them a wow result. But if I do that, I got to crack open another tip, and it costs me another $50, $100, $200.
Yeah,
right.
More,
so now you're making clinical decisions based on financial outcomes, right? And that's
And the other thing about that too, and I've heard this from several doctors, is they can't afford to treat all their staff members like they would like to. If there's no consumables and if this is easily used by the staff, they can treat each other, they can practice, they can see what's going on. But if they have a $200 or $300 disposable cost, they're not going to do it.
Yeah,
the doctor's not going to let them. So it's great. It's so many lasers, you don't have to have disposables. It's just kind of a money-making thing for some of the laser companies. How does this compare to a pico laser or melasma? Because melasma is that's a hard one. A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you look at pico lasers, right? And we actually have a very similar kind of mechanism of action when we look at pigment. Okay, so when we treat pigment, we don't get the crusting and coffee grounds and the flaking off and all that, right? What we do is we break that pigment up, much like a pico laser does. And then that is absorbed by the body and swept away. The difference with this is that because of the way that soft pulsing, the way that we deliver the energy, is that we don't end up with any sort of rebound effect, coming in, a month later, et cetera, right? I mean, we're getting nice, long-lasting, consistent results with our melasma patients. And I will say too, as much as I would love to say I'm smart enough to totally understand why. And the only thing that makes me feel a little bit better about it is most of my top derms, none of my top derms I work with can explain to me why either exactly. There's lots of theories bouncing around out there, but I will tell you what's crazy is 1319's chromophore is water, right? Mm-hmm. We use 1319 in that second pass over melasma or pigment, and it literally, you will see the pigment continue to break up, and almost you get this blur type of effect. I always laugh and say, my daughters use the blur filter on Instagram or whatever, right? And we all see too. We see ladies that are my age or our age, and they look like they're 30, and you're like, wait, I saw you last night. You don't look like that. But that 1319 wavelength helps break that up and give that kind of blur filter effect.
Right, great. Does this reduce pore size?
Yes, absolutely. So pore size reduction is one of the absolute off the table things we see, and it's pretty wild. I mean, you'll see things happen on the table. You'll see them shrink up right in front of your eyes.
Nice. And last one I have here is, how does this compare to the XLD laser?
Right. So XLD 532 1064 combo. The whole reason that the industry went to 532 years ago was because nobody could create a solid state yellow laser. So what was the next best thing? Let's try green.
Yep.
Okay. Decent absorption in oxyhemoglobin, pretty high in melanin. So you've got to worry about those darker skin types again, right? So really, it's if you look at the ADVATx, it really is. If you took a 532 1064, a pico laser, an IPL, took the very best things out of each one of those that you really love, and put them all into one device, you got the ADVATx.
Yep. Super slick. This is such cool technology. Yeah, well, I think that's probably our time for tonight. So thank you so much for presenting this, and thank you for the folks that are joining. And if you have any questions, Travis, what's your contact information?
Yeah, great. So my email address is tcm, as in Mike, at Advalight, ADVALIGHT.com.
Okay. And the website is?
www.advalight.com.
Okay, great. And mine is lasercoach.com. Information about me is on there. And again, I'm available to do advanced training and here for any of your needs, anything laser. So anyway, thanks, Travis. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.
Thanks, Don.
Okay.